What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I decided I hadn't done a West Virginia true crime video in a while, so I thought today I would kick off 2021 the right way, covering not just a West Virginia true crime video, but another Wetzel County, West Virginia true crime video. Because for some reason, there's so many. But today I thought I would cover one that, really kind of got me into all of this. It kind of got me into studying local history, West Virginia history, because of some of the other forms of media it kind of bled into. It got me into the paranormal and ghost stories and the supernatural and stuff like that. So today we're going to be talking about the Good Farm murder of Wetzel County. If your concept of casual television involves curling up with a nice warm beverage and watching murder documentaries, why don't you do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button. This is the Best Virginian. I cover all things West Virginia history and travel related. This includes from time to time some weird West Virginia crime stories. And today is going to be no different. Today we're going to go to the small town of Folsom, West Virginia, right along Route 20, one of the little blink and you miss it towns in between New Martinsville, West Virginia and Clarksburg, West Virginia. A few towns over from where I grew up. Today we're going to talk about the case of Tim Good and the Good Farm murder. So our story is going to begin Sunday, November 13th, 1994, in a little town about 2 miles away from the Harrison County line in Wetzel County, in Folsom, Wetzel County. An anonymous call was made to the authorities that someone had broken into an abandoned house, and while inside, they claimed they found the skeletal remains of a human body. At first, the cops thought this was a prank, but sure enough, when the police arrived, they did in fact find human remains. The last owner that had lived at this residence was a man by the name of Tim Good, who had moved to the area in the very early 90s, right around 1991, from Pennsylvania. But in 1993, after the house had sat empty for several months, the property went up for auction due to back taxes, and a man from Pennsylvania had purchased the property sight unseen, just intending to use it as like deer hunting property. He would later go on to say he didn't even know there was a house on the property when he initially put in his bid for it. Now, neighbors generally like Good. They described Good as a religious man and a very well-to-do individual, and they expressed concerns that they thought the remains could be his due to his sudden disappearance about a year prior. Police also started looking into two roommates that Good had that had just been seen a few weeks prior to the reports of these skeletal remains. Neighbors reported a few weeks prior the couple had arrived at the farm in a taxi from Clarksburg with enough groceries and supplies to last them for a good bit, but upon seeing the back door had been broken into, had began asking neighbors for a ride to Washington, D.C. Okay, couple red flags when you start looking at the story. So after the property went up for auction and was bought by someone else, this couple that had lived there earlier decided it would just be fine to move back in. And like no one questioned that. They also brought with them supplies and food like they were going to stay for a while. But upon seeing the property had been entered, decided that they were just going to casually ask neighbors to drive them the 4+ hours to Washington, D.C., and the neighbors just went, okay, yeah, sounds like a great time to take a 4+ hour car ride. Like, this case is weird, and it gets a whole lot more weird. initially the police were looking for Good. They were looking for the former homeowner, and they wanted any information they could get from him about where these skeletal remains came from, who they belonged to, on and on and on and so forth. And they sent the remains to the state medical examiner's office. Within a week or so, the state medical examiner came back to them. Not just had he identified the cause of death, but he also had found a really great lead on where the police could start looking for Tim Good. The state medical examiner's office, the skeletal remains, belonged to that of Tim Good. With this revelation, the police really doubled down on their searches for these roommates of Tim Good. Also, the cause of death was a combination of strangulation and blunt force trauma to the head. In 1996, a nationwide alert went out for one David Freeman, who had lived with Good from 1991 until 1994. Even though Good was found dead in 1994, and it's believed he died sometime in early to mid 1993. But Freeman still lived with Good. I mean, there's evidence that he lived in the house while Good was rotting away in the basement. Did I mention that this case is very, very weird? And if that's not weird enough for you, Freeman thought of himself of a bit of a holy man who believed himself to be the chosen one and that he was going to prepare for the end times in this little farm in Folsom, West Virginia. Freeman was knowledgeable of many world religions and was in the process of starting his own little cult. Freeman and his female accomplice spiritually controlled Good, forcing him to live in the basement of the farm, withholding food and water from him, sometimes for days at a time, all while living in the upstairs, where they lived a pretty lavish life. They had multiple large screen TVs, a wet bar, the latest state-of-the-art computers, and even a hot tub. And it's believed that Tim Good wasn't even the first victim of Freeman. How do we know all this? Because Freeman wrote absolutely everything down in a number of journals and diaries, because that's what all of these people tend to do, isn't it? They kind of write down everything, leave big piles of evidence behind for the cops to find. Just when photographs were published of Freeman as part of a nationwide search, two leads immediately came back to the police. One was from a priest in the Wheeling area who said Freeman had contacted him trying to receive money from the church. The other was from a man who sold Freeman a bulldozer that was identified at the farm at the same time of the discovery of Good's body. There were other pieces of heavy machinery found at the farm. This included a backhoe, 2 tractors, a cement mixer, and 3 ATVs. Like, he had a lot of toys he could have used to dig a hole and bury this guy instead of just leaving him rotting away in the basement while he lived in the upstairs. You see why I kind of wanted to talk about this case? The weirdness is almost over. There's still a little bit we gotta... Now, one thing that investigators noted was the absolute absence of any kind of change or form of money at the farm. An investigator said that basically he could walk into anyone's house and walk out with a couple dollars worth of change, but there was absolutely no loose bills or coinage anywhere in the farm. They had sucked all the money out of it. They even went as far as like checking in like nightstands and the couches for change, and there was nothing. Like, they spent every single dime that Good had and just bounced. In March of 1996, Hollywood got involved in this case. as the television series Unsolved Mysteries did a segment on the murder of Tim Good. And let's just talk about how great the original Unsolved Mysteries was for this type of thing. Like, what set it apart from so many other true crime and, mystery documentaries is the fact that they did look into some of these smaller cases, but they kind of wrapped it in this mystery burrito of other cases and anomalies. Like, a typical episode would go along the lines of, on tonight's episode, we're going to talk about internal combustion, crop circles. Have you seen David Smith? He was like 5'11", 195 pounds, Bigfoot, Atlantis, sea monsters. He was last seen in the Little Canada area of Minnesota, El Chupacabra, voodoo. Any information you have can help. His family is super worried about him and thinks something might have happened to him. We have an anonymous tip line if you want to talk, if you just want to call that. Also on tonight's episode, we're going to talk about ghosts. Like, they just kind of wrap these cases up with other far more interesting, far more over-the-top, anomalous cases, but they still got the point across. How successful was Unsolved Mysteries? Well, within 12 hours of the episode airing, someone went, "Yep, I know that crazy person," and immediately reported Freeman to the police. On May 18th, Winston George Jelks, aka William David Cooper, aka David Freeman. Why do these people always have like 50 aliases? First and foremost, number one, never keep journals or diaries. Number two, don't have 50 aliases. And number three, if you have a backhoe, like, stick your evidence in the ground. Jelks was arrested in connection with the murder of Tim Good at a farmhouse in Sterling, Virginia, and extradited back to the state of West Virginia. Jelks pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Upon reviewing all the evidence, and once they got Jelks in custody and they kind of corroborated his story with the evidence they had gotten, it was believed that in late 1993, Good, being tired of his mistreatment, being tired of having food withheld from him, and generally Jelks just freeloading and spending all his money while he was forced to basically work the farm all day, Good went to Clarksburg, bought a handgun, returned to the farm, and confronted Jelks. Shortly after, a fight broke out during which Good received the injuries that would eventually lead to his death. And this concludes the case of Tim Good. It's probably one of the weirdest Wetzel County mysteries, murder stories. And it's definitely one of the few that actually has a definitive ending. Like, not just did they catch the person, but the guy, he was sentenced. He did spend time in jail. It has fascinated and confused folks for years. People in Wetzel County still regularly talk about it. I can remember in high school, before they tore down the farm, people would go there just to see, the murder farm. And people still readily talk about it all these years later. And it really was one of the things that got me interested in local history and West Virginia history. And again, when it was televised on Unsolved Mysteries, that was kind of the first exposure I had to a lot of the paranormal cases and things that Unsolved Mysteries brought to the table. So if it wouldn't have been for this case, I probably wouldn't be doing this to this day. I probably would have much more normal hobbies. I'd probably have a much more stable and normal social life. But with that being said, until next time, don't forget to stay wild and stay wonderful. And I'll talk to you later.